Salvete omnes! Welcome back to our second letter about the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Last time we might remember that Pliny's uncle's friend, he despaired over the situation and wasn't able to convince Pliny and his mother to leave, so he flees. And Pliny's mother says, "Go on without me, you're young and should save yourself." But Pliny, being the dutiful son, says, "I'm not going to leave you, Mom." So they start making their way into the crowded streets. So we'll pick up with yam. Yam kinis. Now ash. And we need a verb here, so we can add a linking verb, erat. Now there was ash. Tamen, however, it was adhuc, still, kind of till now, till this point, it was still rarus, still rare. So the ashfall was fairly sporadic. Respicio, I look back. And when Pliny looks back, a densa caligo, a dense cloud or mist, imminebat, it was looming over. That's a compound verb with that in prefix, so it takes a dative object. It was looming over our tergis, our backs. And cloud, feminine, is going to be further described. A cloud which sequebatur was following, direct object, us. And it was following us, the cloud being in fusa, it's a perfect passive participle, having been poured out. And how was it poured out? We have our ablative modo. In the manner, in the mode, and in what mode? We have this genitive phrase surrounding it. In the manner of a torrens terrae, of a torrent of earth, or a downpour of earth. So it looks like basically a landslide that's about to close in on them. And therefore, Pliny inquam, I say, deflectamus. That's a present subjunctive, since it's a third conjugation. Let's turn away. Dum, while videmus, while we see. Basically, while we can see. And we're going to do this for a negative purpose, so that something doesn't happen, or if you prefer, lest something happens, so that non obteramur, so that we are not trampled, we who are strati. That's a masculine plural, but notice that in Latin that will apply to a group of mixed genders, so that's Pliny and his mother, lest being strewn out, laid out in via on the street, we should be trampled by a turba, by a crowd of comitantes, of people who are accompanying, I guess nearby, in tenebris, in the dark. Fairly reasonable move, get out of the way of all the crowd of panicking people. And weeks consideramus. We hardly consider, basically saying how quick this is happening, et nox, and the night does something. And I think we need to add another linking verb here. We hardly consult about this, and all of a sudden, erat nox, and it's night. What kind of night? Non qualis. Qualis means such a kind, and here it's really going to be a comparison, so really we can translate as like. So not like a lunis, moonless, aut nubila, or cloudy night. That's one kind of darkness. Said qualis, but just like a night in locis clausis, in closed places, light with lumine extincto, with light having been extinguished. Perfect passive participle. So see, it's not just like it's a dark night outside. It's like you're in a closed room with all the lights out. It's that type of oppressive darkness. And now we get into the more dramatic and famous scenes from what's been going on in this darkness. Audires. You might notice that's a to subject, you, and it's an imperfect subjunctive. So we could think in our conditionals, you might say, if this happens, this might happen, or perhaps this is a potential subjunctive, something that might happen. So really it's a you would have heard, you would be hearing. And what would you be hearing if you were there? The accusative plural, fourth declension, ululatus, the ululating or the howling of women. And connected without conjunctions, a little asyndeton, the quiratus, the wailing of infants, and the clamores, the shouting of men. So no conjunctions, adding to the kind of drama and cumulative effect of all of these terrible sounds. And continuing on, let's see how the crowd is reacting. And we're going to have a situation where we have Ali doing one thing, Ali doing another, Ali doing another. So we might remember that that correlation is best expressed in English by some doing this, others doing this, others doing that. And they all go with our verb requirebant and skitabant. So some were looking for, from choir, searching for their parentes, their parents, others for their children, others for their spouses. And they're doing this with their voices. And noskitabant, and they were recognizing them with their voices. So they only have sound in order to try to find each other. You can only imagine the panic situation if darkness suddenly descended in what's already a pretty chaotic situation. Now we're going to have a contrasting he and illi as our nominative subjects. These people are doing this, those people are doing that. It's very similar to some others. So these people, miserebantur, they were uh, pitying or kind of commiserating about suum casum, their own misfortune. Other people were, you commiserating about the casum suorum, right, the misfortune of their own people. Some people are saying, "Wow, my life is terrible." Others are like, "My family, their life is terrible." And we're gonna wrap up with a couple of nice relative clauses here. Erant qui, there were who. So what if now for something missing, we really need the antecedent of that relative clause. There were, I don't know, people who, or those who. So there are some people who precarentur. Notice an imperfect subjunctive again, showing that this is a relative clause of characteristic. I'll just write that out as a reminder. So some relative clauses if we're showing a type uh, of people as opposed to something that's literally happening, take a subjunctive verb. So there are people who were praying for mortem, praying for death, metu mortis, by fear of death or because of fear of death, perhaps an ablative of cause. And multi, many people, adeus manus tolere. So it's tolere here. That's an infinitive. This is a historical infinitive where it's just acting like a regular verb, but in the pace of the narrative, he's not even declining it. So many people, they lift it up, and they're going to lift their manus, their hands, to the gods. But in contrast, plures, more people, might even be able to argue this as a form of anaphora, where it's different forms of the same adjective, forming correlating sentences. But more people, on the other hand, they jumping all the way to our verb, interpretebantur. They were interpreting that. So now we're going to have an indirect statement with an accusative subject and an infinitive verb. So we have Deus olos. They're interpreting that any gods, and nuskrom is nowhere now. And since I'm not seeing a verb in our indirect statement, we're going to have to add in an esse. So more, we're interpreting that there were not any gods anywhere now. So the gods have left us. And they were interpreting that. So we're going to have a second indirect statement with the que, that a noctem, that there was a night. Once again, we're going to have to put that esse in, that there was night that was eternal, that night was eternal, at novissimum, and kind of very new or novel mundo. I think this is a dative for the world. So they're interpreting that there was this new and eternal night for the world. The world's ending, basically. No gods, eternal night. Nec defuerunt. And they were not lacking or were not absent. Once again, we're going to have a relative clause saying, those people who did something. The people were not absent who augerent. Augeo, to make something bigger, like augment, who were increasing. What are they increasing? Vera pericula, true dangers. And they're going to increase them by means of some types of terrors, by terrors that were fictis, made up, and mentitis, lied about. So there's some misinformation spreading with made up fears in addition to the very real ones. Aderant qui, there were present who. So there were present people, those who nuntiavant, were announcing, and you're going to announce that something happens. So we have an indirect statement announcing that illud miseni, that of Misenum, we really say that portion of Misenum, ruise, that it had fallen down or had collapsed. Think of ruin, a downfall. Or that illud, so this part, that part, also a correlation here, that part of Misenum, ardere, was burning. And they're saying this also, you can take this ablative, adverbially. They're saying it falsely, but they're saying it dative to credentibus, to people who are believing with that present participle. So some of this misinformation in this darkness is that, the West Misenum has collapsed. This other part is on fire. You can imagine the sorts of panic and conclusions people are drawing in this very terrible situation, even though they are currently false. All right, we'll pick up in our last video to wrap up this dramatic letter, and I will talk to you all soon. Valete omnes.